The air in the med bay was tense. Dr. Aiden Roth adjusted his medical scanner, muttering under his breath as he reviewed the details of his mission. It wasn't unusual for the Federation to send medics into conflict zones, but this assignment had red flags plastered all over it. Aiden leaned back in his chair, his sharp green eyes scanning the encrypted message one last time. Mission brief, Dr. Roth. Proceed immediately to the designated coordinates on Zaros V. Patient, Naila, wife of King Collier. Condition, critical. Faction, rebel forces. Extreme discretion required. Diplomatic complications expected. The words rebel forces and King Collier weighed heavily. Collier was infamous across the galaxy for his brutal conquest of neighboring planets. Entire civilizations had been reduced to ash under his command. The idea of treating his wife especially in rebel territory felt like juggling lit plasma rods. If the rebels didn't kill him for aiding the enemy, the king certainly would if he ever found out. But orders were orders. The shuttle ride to Zaros V was uneventful, save for the unnerving silence of the Federation pilot. As the craft entered the planet's atmosphere, Aiden saw the dense jungle stretch out below, a chaotic sprawl of green under an ominous orange sky. Zaros V was alive with movement, its untamed wilds teeming with creatures and, no doubt, hidden rebel sentries. The shuttle landed in a clearing marked only by a faint shimmer of a holographic beacon. A group of rebels emerged from the underbrush, their faces hidden behind helmets and scarves. Their weapons were pointed at him. Medic, the tallest one demanded, his voice sharp and suspicious. Yes, Dr. Aiden Roth, Aiden replied, stepping off the shuttle with his medical pack raised in plain view. I'm here to help. The rebel leader, a broad-shouldered man with piercing gray eyes, approached. I'm Ryan, he said gruffly. Remember this, Doctor, if she dies, you die. Aiden didn't flinch. He had dealt with threats before. Then let me do my job. The rebels escorted him to a hidden bunker carved into the hillside. The inside smelled of damp earth and antiseptic. The air was thick with tension. Aiden was led to a dimly lit chamber where Naila lay on a makeshift stretcher, surrounded by rudimentary medical equipment. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Aiden's gaze lingered on her for a moment. She was beautiful, but not in the way he expected from someone in her position. Her features were sharp and regal, her hair an intricate cascade of silvery strands that shimmered faintly in the dim light. She wore a torn gown embroidered with what looked like symbols of an ancient language. She's been like this since the attack, Ryan said, his voice softer now, almost protective. We stabilized her as best we could, but she's different. You'll see. Aiden knelt beside her, activating his scanner. The readings immediately went haywire. Her vitals were their heart rate, oxygen levels, but the patterns were unusual. Her heart seemed to beat in tandem with some unseen rhythm, and faint pulses of light flickered beneath her skin. Her blood pressure is dropping fast, Aiden said, setting the scanner aside and pulling out a syringe. She needs a transfusion. Her blood type? Ryan hesitated. We don't know. You don't. Aiden stopped mid-sentence. He bit his tongue. Arguing wouldn't help. He swabbed her arm and drew a sample, but what he saw made him freeze. Her blood wasn't red. It shimmered, shifting through colors like oil on water. What is this? Aiden muttered. His mind raced. He'd seen genetic modifications and alien physiology before, but nothing like this. Focus, Doctor, Ryan snapped. Can you save her? I'll do what I can, Aiden replied. He couldn't let his curiosity distract him. He set up in 4, carefully analyzing her unique biology to craft a compatible saline solution. As he worked, he noticed something strange. Her wounds began to heal slightly before his eyes, as if her body was accelerating the process on its own. Yet, her energy was draining rapidly, like a flickering light bulb on the verge of burnout. This isn't normal, Aiden said aloud, more to himself than to anyone else. Her body's trying to repair itself, but whatever's happening inside her is disrupting the process. What does that mean? Ryan asked. It means if I don't stabilize her soon, she's not going to make it. Aiden worked faster, ignoring the way his hands trembled. He inserted a microstimulator near her heart to regulate her irregular rhythms. As he adjusted the settings, a faint glow radiated from her chest. What the hell? Aiden whispered. The light wasn't coming from her skin, it was emanating from inside her. Something alive, pulsing with energy. Ryan, Aiden said, his voice low. What aren't you telling me? Ryan crossed his arms, his face unreadable. Just save her. The ground shook violently, cutting off further questions. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling as distant explosions echoed through the jungle. One of the rebels burst into the room, panting. We're under attack. Collier's forces are here. Ryan grabbed his weapon, his face hardening. Keep her alive, he ordered Aiden. If we fall, you'll have to finish the job. As the rebels rushed out, Aiden felt the weight of the situation settle over him like a suffocating blanket. He was alone with a woman whose biology defied explanation, in the middle of a war zone, with time running out. He leaned over Naila, focusing on her delicate face. Don't give up on me now, he murmured. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, and Aiden thought he saw a faint smile. Then her body convulsed, the light within her chest surging outward. And for a brief, blinding moment, everything changed. The bunker fell eerily silent after the first shockwave of light. Aiden blinked several times, trying to adjust his vision. Naila's convulsion had sent an unexpected pulse of energy through the room, causing his equipment to short-circuit. His diagnostic scanner flickered, then went dark. Great, Aiden muttered, pulling off his gloves and tossing them aside. As if this couldn't get any worse. Naila lay still on the stretcher, her breathing shallow but steady. Her wounds had stopped bleeding, yet the glow beneath her skin was now faintly visible, pulsing in time with an unseen rhythm. Aiden couldn't shake the sensation that he was treating something or someone not entirely of this world. He activated his backup tools, examining the sample of iridescent blood he had drawn earlier. The results made no sense. Her cells appeared to be in a constant state of flux, dividing and healing at an accelerated rate, but there was an anomaly, the presence of a secondary structure, an intricate lattice of energy-like filaments entwined with her DNA. What are you? Aiden whispered, staring at the swirling colors under the microscope. Before he could ponder further, the ground rumbled again. Another explosion reverberated outside, sending a fine mist of dust cascading from the ceiling. Aiden's stomach churned. The king's forces were closing in. He had to act quickly if he wanted to save her and possibly himself. Ryan stormed back into the room, his face coated in dirt and sweat. He slammed the door shut behind him, the sound echoing through the small chamber. We're holding them off, but not for long, he said, his voice tight with urgency. What's her status? She's alive, but... Aiden hesitated, gesturing toward her glowing chest. There's something you haven't told me. Something important. Ryan's jaw tightened. It doesn't matter. Just fix her. It does matter, Aiden snapped, his frustration boiling over. Her biology isn't normal. Her blood isn't normal. There's an energy source inside her that I can't identify, and it's interfering with my equipment. If I don't understand what I'm dealing with, I can't guarantee I'll save her. Ryan's gaze flickered to Naila, a shadow of something regret? Guilt crossing his face. He lowered his voice. The king doesn't know what she truly is. We only discovered it after she defected to our side. Discovered what? Aiden pressed. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Naila isn't just Collier's wife. She's the vessel. Aiden frowned. The vessel of what? The Nexus, Ryan said gravely. An ancient energy source, older than our civilization. It's said to be the heart of the universe itself, capable of creating or destroying entire worlds. Naila carries it within her. Aiden stared at him, disbelief etched across his face. You're telling me she's carrying some cosmic power inside her? Believe it or not, Doctor, but it's the truth, Ryan replied. The Nexus chose her for reasons we don't fully understand. Collier wanted to harness its power to conquer the galaxy. Naila risked everything to escape and join our cause. Aiden's mind raced. He had heard whispers of the Nexus in myth and folklore, but he never thought it was real. And now it was lying on his stretcher, inside a woman who was barely clinging to life. And you thought it was a good idea to bring her into the middle of a war zone? Aiden asked incredulously. She insisted, Ryan said. She believed she could broker peace between the factions. She thought Collier might listen to her. Instead, he sent assassins. Aiden looked back at Naila, the faint glow from her chest casting soft patterns on her pale skin. This Nexus, can it help her? Heal her faster? It already is, Ryan said. But the damage she sustained was too severe, even for the Nexus. That's why we called you. You're the best. Flattering, but I'm not exactly equipped to deal with divine cosmic artifacts, Aiden muttered. She's stable for now, but her body is struggling to contain the energy. If the Nexus destabilizes Dash. A deafening crash interrupted him as the bunker door buckled inward. Ryan raised his weapon, his expression hardening. They're here. The door burst open, revealing soldiers clad in the black and crimson armor of King Collier's forces. Ryan opened fire, dropping the first two through the doorway. Aiden shielded Naila with his body, his mind racing for a plan. He wasn't a fighter, but he couldn't let them take her not after everything he just learned. As chaos erupted around him, Naila stirred. Her glowing eyes fluttered open, and her hand shot out, grabbing Aiden's wrist with surprising strength. Aiden, she whispered, her voice faint but resonant. You must protect the Nexus. I'm trying, Aiden said, panic edging his voice. But I think we're out of time. Naila's grip tightened. Not yet. Her chest glowed brighter, the energy inside her surging outward. The soldiers hesitated, momentarily blinded by the light. Ryan took advantage of their confusion, firing rapidly and taking down the remaining intruders. But Naila wasn't done. Her body began to levitate, the light radiating from her chest expanding into an intricate, pulsating sphere. Aiden stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the air crackled with power. What's happening? Ryan shouted, his voice barely audible over the rising hum of energy. She's activating the Nexus, Aiden realized. I think she's trying to protect us. The light grew brighter, consuming everything in the room. Aiden felt the ground shift beneath him, and for a moment, it was as if time itself froze. When the light faded, the bunker was silent once more. The soldiers were gone, and Naila lay unconscious on the stretcher, her glow dimmed but steady. Aiden exhaled shakily, his heart pounding. He didn't know how, but she had just saved them all. And he had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Aiden's hands trembled as he checked Naila's vitals. Her glow had faded, but the faint pulsing in her chest remained steady. She was alive, but whatever she had just done, it wasn't something the human mind could easily comprehend. Ryan paced the room, his weapon lowered but his body tense. What the hell just happened? He asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. Aiden swallowed hard. She activated the Nexus, didn't she? Ryan nodded grimly. It's the only explanation. That energy surge, it wasn't just light. It wiped out Collier's soldiers completely. They didn't even have time to scream. But how? Aiden pressed. She's unconscious, barely alive. How could she summon that kind of power? The Nexus has a will of its own, Ryan said, his voice dark. Naila is its vessel, but in moments of crisis, it can act independently. It's ancient, alive in ways we don't understand. Aiden rubbed his temples, trying to process everything. So, you're telling me this cosmic power can just decide to obliterate threats whenever it wants? That doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Ryan's lips pressed into a thin line. It's not that simple. The Nexus is both a gift and a curse. It responds to Naila's emotions, her instincts. But if she loses control... The thought hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Before Aiden could reply, the air around them shimmered. The walls of the bunker dissolved, replaced by a vast, star-filled expanse. Aiden staggered, his breath hitching as the jungle, the dirt, and the sky above vanished, leaving only endless space. The stars were impossibly close, bright pinpricks in an infinite black canvas. Where are we? Aiden stammered, looking around. Ryan raised his weapon instinctively, though it seemed futile in the surreal environment. This isn't real. It can't be. The stretcher floated beside them, Naila's body suspended in the air like a celestial artifact. Her chest glowed faintly, casting soft ripples of light into the void. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the space. It wasn't human, and it wasn't coming from any single direction. It was everywhere. You have come too far, Naila. The Nexus belongs to me. Aiden and Ryan turned toward the source of the voice, or at least where it felt strongest. A colossal figure emerged from the darkness, its form both humanoid and monstrous. Its body seemed to absorb the light of the stars, and its crimson eyes burned with a terrifying intensity. Collier, Ryan growled, his grip tightening on his weapon. The Tyrant King's gaze swept over them, dismissing Ryan and Aiden as if they were insects. His attention fixed on Naila. You cannot hide in the fabric of reality itself, he said, his voice vibrating through the void. The Nexus is mine by right. Surrender it to me, and I might spare these insignificant creatures. Naila's eyes fluttered open. Her glow intensified, and she floated upright, her body radiating an otherworldly energy. The Nexus chose me, Collier. You have no claim to its power. Collier's expression twisted with fury. You think you can wield it? You are nothing but a vessel, a fragile shell for something greater. Naila raised a hand, and the light around her formed into a protective barrier. I may be the vessel, but I am not powerless. Collier roared, unleashing a wave of shadowy tendrils that surged toward her. The barrier held, but cracks began to form in the luminous shield. Aiden and Ryan were thrown backward, tumbling through the void as the force of the attack rippled through the space around them. Do something! Ryan shouted at Aiden, who clung to a floating piece of debris. What do you expect me to do? Aiden shot back. I'm a medic, not a cosmic warrior. But then his eyes fell on Naila. Her glow was flickering, and the strain on her face was evident. The Nexus might be powerful, but Naila's body was still recovering. She couldn't hold out forever. Desperate, Aiden rummaged through his medical pack, pulling out a plasma injector and a stimulator. Ryan, distract him. Ryan didn't hesitate. He aimed his weapon at Collier and fired, the blasts of energy crackling uselessly against the Tyrant King's shadowy form. It wasn't much, but it was enough to draw Collier's attention away from Naila. Aiden floated toward her, dodging tendrils of shadow as he activated the stimulator. Naila, I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to trust me. She didn't respond, her focus locked on maintaining the barrier. Aiden pressed the stimulator to her shoulder, sending a surge of energy into her system. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it might buy her some time. Her glow flared, and the barrier solidified. Collier snarled, his crimson eyes narrowing. You think this changes anything? You cannot defeat me. Naila's voice was steady, but it carried a power that resonated through the void. I don't need to defeat you, Collier. I only need to protect the Nexus. She raised both hands, and the light around her condensed into a concentrated beam. It struck Collier, sending him reeling. For the first time, the Tyrant King faltered, his shadowy form flickering. You will regret this, he growled, retreating into the darkness. The void began to collapse, the stars swirling into a vortex of light. Aiden felt himself being pulled backward, the space around him stretching and distorting. He reached out for Naila, but she was already fading into the blinding radiance. Naila, he shouted, his voice drowned out by the rushing wind of the collapsing void. Aiden and Ryan hit the ground hard. They were back in the jungle, the sounds of distant explosions replaced by an eerie silence. Naila lay motionless nearby, her glow dim but steady. What just happened? Ryan asked, his voice shaky. I think. Aiden paused, catching his breath. I think she pushed him back. For now. Ryan nodded, his expression grim. But he'll come for her again. He won't stop until he has the Nexus. Aiden looked at Naila, her face peaceful despite the chaos they had just escaped. He knew Ryan was right. This was far from over. And deep down, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that their fight had only just begun. The jungle was eerily quiet in the wake of Collier's retreat. The distant sounds of the battle had died down, but the air felt thick with anticipation, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. Aiden stood, his legs shaky from the disorienting experience of being pulled through the void, but his mind was still racing. They had survived for now, but how much longer could they hold out? Ryan was already on his feet, checking his weapon and scanning the perimeter. He wasn't one to linger, always ready for the next threat. But this time, his focus was on Naila, who lay on the ground, her glowing form dimming but still present, the pulse of energy beneath her skin barely perceptible. Is she okay? Aiden asked, his voice hoarse. Ryan didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on Naila's still form. She's alive. But I don't know how much longer she can keep this up. Aiden moved closer, kneeling beside her. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The glowing energy that had radiated from her had now softened into a gentle shimmer, like the dying embers of a fire. He couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of awe and dread. She was more than just a person. She was the vessel, something the universe had chosen, something that could alter the balance of existence. Can I help her? Aiden asked, more to himself than anyone else. You've done everything you can, Doctor, Ryan said, his voice hard. But there's only so much a human medic can do. The Nexus is beyond anything you've ever dealt with. Aiden swallowed. I can't just sit here and wait. If she's connected to this power, maybe I can stop, Ryan cut him off. If you try anything more, you might kill her. His eyes softened for the briefest moment. I know you're trying to save her, but you need to understand something. The Nexus is like a flame. If you feed it too much too quickly, it'll consume everything in its path. Including her. Aiden clenched his fists, feeling the weight of Ryan's words. He was caught between his medical training and the surreal reality of Naila's existence. Nothing made sense, and every instinct told him to save her to heal her. But in this case, he wasn't sure how far he could push his own understanding of medicine, much less the forces beyond the realm of human comprehension. Naila's eyelids fluttered open, her gaze unfocused at first. She blinked and turned her head, looking at Aiden with a mixture of gratitude and something ancient. Her lips parted, and she whispered, "It's happening." Aiden knelt closer, his heart pounding. "Naila, can you hear me? You're safe, just stay with me." She smiled faintly, though it was a sad, almost resigned smile. "I am more than safe, Aiden. But the world. It is not. The Nexus is a burden. And it must be protected." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're not a burden. You're more than human," she finished for him. Her voice was weak, but there was a strength in it that cut through the tension. "Yes. The Nexus chose me not for power, but for balance. I cannot control it. It controls me, as it controls everything around us. Aiden could feel the air growing heavier. The ground beneath them shifted, not physically, but in a way that vibrated through his very bones. The reality around them felt fluid, like the very fabric of time was stretching and warping. Was this the Nexus at work? Or was it Naila, struggling to keep her hold on it? I can feel it, Naila whispered, her eyes closed. The rift is opening again. Collier will not stop until he takes it from me. He's too dangerous. And I am too weak. No, Aiden said urgently, reaching for her hand. You're not weak. You're just Dash. Naila's fingers curled around his, her grip firm and cold. Her eyes opened, and for the first time, Aiden saw something new in them, a depth, an endless depth. Aiden, you've already helped me more than I ever thought possible. But now, it is time for a choice. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, her body shuddering under the weight of the power coursing through her. The Nexus has no loyalty to either side. To the king, to the rebels. Even to me. It will choose its next host. But it is not a simple choice. It is a choice between destruction or salvation. Between everything and nothing. Aiden's heart raced. What does that mean for you? It means that if I cannot contain it, if I cannot control it will destroy everything. Everyone. Even you, Aiden. Naila's voice faltered. You. You are the only one who can stop it. Stop it? How can I possibly stop something like this? Aiden shook his head, disbelief seeping into his words. Naila looked at him one last time, her expression filled with something like acceptance, like she knew the end was coming. You don't have to do it alone. You never did. Her voice echoed, and in that instant, something strange happened. The space around them shifted again. The stars above flickered and shifted like celestial flames in the vast expanse of the universe. Aiden felt as if time had stopped, or perhaps it had unfolded entirely, past, present, and future merging into one endless, infinite moment. And then, Naila's body radiated an intense light, more powerful than anything Aiden had seen before. The Nexus was pulling her in, or perhaps she was pulling the Nexus in. Aiden felt himself drawn forward, as if the energy in the air was now alive, reaching out to him. The power flooded through his body, and for a brief, surreal instant, he understood. The Nexus was not a weapon, nor a force to be controlled. It was a connection, a link between all things, a bridge between light and darkness. Naila was not the master of the Nexus. She was the vessel through which its energy flowed, just as he, too, could be a part of it. His heart raced. He reached out toward her, his hands trembling. And then, as if guided by instinct, he made a choice. I will help you, he whispered. Naila's body shuddered as the light around her swelled. The very fabric of reality seemed to pulse with her, and for a fleeting moment, Aiden felt his mind become one with hers. He understood now. She was not just protecting the Nexus. She was becoming the Nexus. And so, in this moment, they were united, two beings, human and vessel, bound by fate, tied to something far greater than either could comprehend. The light surged, and Naila's voice, though distant, reached Aiden's ears one last time. Together. The world around them shuddered violently, and for a brief, surreal moment, Aiden felt himself suspended between dimensions. Time fractured. The universe bent. And then, as quickly as it had all begun, everything snapped back into place. The jungle was silent again. The stars, the light, the Nexus all had vanished, leaving only the quiet of the forest behind. Naila lay before him, her body still and peaceful, her eyes closed. But now, something had changed. The burden had been lifted. The power of the Nexus no longer radiated from her, yet it lingered, just beneath the surface. The choice had been made. Aiden looked at her, his heart heavy with understanding. The galaxy, and perhaps the entire universe, had been spared. And yet, the journey was far from over.